Hello everybody, it's Donna. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video is part of the Alphabet Inspiration Card Challenge, and today's letter is letter H. I'm going to be using the word hello, but there are some other words up there that you can use for inspiration. Here's a picture of the card that we're going to be making today. It is a simpler version of the one that I posted on our Facebook group. I'm using the Jar of Flowers stamp set and punch bundle, as well as the stitched rectangles. Now you don't really need the stitched rectangles, you can just simply cut down a piece of Whisper White to the appropriate size. Here's a version of the card that I made previously. This is using the Seaside spray. But the one that we're going to be doing today, I'm going to be using Rococo Rose instead. So this is the card that I made that I posted on the Facebook group, where I did it as a shaker card, and I also cut out some extra little flowers and popped them up to give it lots of dimension. This is the card though that we're actually going to be making. I'm going to be doing it in Rococo Rose though, instead of the Seaside spray. So you're going to need a piece of the Rococo Rose, 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4 1/4 to give you a side folding card. For the inside of the card, you will also need a piece 5 1/4 by 4 in Whisper White. For the front of the card, you need some DSP or pattern paper, 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. That will give you just a little tiny border. You need a piece of Whisper White, 5.5 by 4 1/4, but I die cut that using the largest of the stitched rectangles. I did that previously off camera, so you didn't need to see me doing that. You also need a scrap of Rococo Rose, 3 1/4 by 2 1/4, as well as another scrap of Rococo Rose in Whisper White for the sentiment. I'm just using a hello stamp. I'm not sure where I got it from. The 1-inch punch and then the 1/8 inch scallop punch. You can use the circle dies or anything else that you have that would fit your sentiment. Just to get rid of these pieces, I'm just going to glue them together so that they're out of the way. This is the inside. I'm not putting anything on the inside. You could stamp something on there if you wish, but I'm just leaving mine blank because it is just a note card or a hello card. On the front as well, I'm going to put the DSP on the front for the same reason, just to have it done and out of the way. I'm just using some liquid glue, but you could use tape runner or whatever else is your favorite. I got some glue there, but if it does show up, I'll just use one of those adhesive erasers to get rid of it. Okay, now we're going to do some stamping on the scrap piece of Rococo Rose, the 3 1/4 by 2 1/4. We're going to use the embossing buddy, and then we're going to stamp on top of that piece with the Versamark ink, which, as most people know, is a wet embossing or a heat embossing technique. It also leaves a watermark if you don't want to use the embossing powder. I'm just covering it with some white embossing powder, and then I'm just going to simply heat set that with my heat tool. Okay, once that's finished and all nice and dry, I'm just going to use my Post-it piece that I had there, just as a little kind of a handle on my cardstock, because it's a little bit small to fit in there. And then just going to use it to line it up perfectly and punch out the jar. Okay, once that's punched out, I'm using the stitched rectangle piece that we had die cut out. And I'm just going to put that jar at the bottom and just using a pencil to trace the top part just a little bit, so I have a guide as to where I want to stamp the bouquet. And then we can erase that afterwards. I'm also going to use a piece of masking paper. I think that's just like sticker paper, that particular piece, but you can use whatever masking paper you have. Even Post-it tape might work. And I'm going to stamp the bouquet I'm using on that to create my mask, as well as on the stitched rectangle piece. Just going to take my jar and make sure I did it. I stamped it a little bit higher than I wanted to, but that's okay. It still worked out fine. But now because I want to, I'm just going to cut that piece out, but because I want the bouquet to be a lot more full, that's why I'm using this masking technique. I'm just going to cut that completely out and set it aside. Now I'm going to color in the one on our stitch rectangle piece. By coloring it in first, after I mask it, it just allows me to see the new flowers really easy. Just everything stands out better. If I had masked it and stamped it all at once and then colored it, I just found that it was harder for me to see the definition between the flowers. Now the first part, this bouquet right here that I'm doing, I'm going to be masking it off. So that's going to stay in what's in the foreground. That's going to stay in the front. And then when I stamp the other two images off to each side, they're going to be kind of behind it. So by coloring this piece first, it just made it a lot easier for me. Now I'm not going to go into detail about how I colored it. I did use Rococo Rose, dark and light, Purple Prosy, dark and light. Then I just used the dark of the Seaside Spray, dark Mango Melody, and the light, I think it may have been Garden Green or Old Olive. I'm not really sure now which one I used. I'm just going to speed through this coloring. I'm not an artist, so I can't really give too much direction on how to color, but I usually start, if the images are big enough, I'll start with the darker color and then I just go over it with the lighter color. You can also do it the other way around. Once it's done, I'm going to take that piece the masked piece that we created, just taking the backing off of it and putting it down right on top of the colored piece. And then once it's lined up perfectly, or how I like it, I am going to take the Memento Tuxedo Black in the original image stamp, and we're going to stamp it one on each side. That just makes my bouquet bigger and more full. I am just going to slightly tilt the stamp a little bit so it's not straight up and down, but I do want to keep the bottom of the stamp kind of within the confines of the jar. And once I stamp this, it's going to look really messy because the masking is double stamped now. But don't worry, once we remove the masking, it'll look gorgeous. And now we're just going to do the same thing on the other side. And that almost doubled the bouquet. Okay, now we're going to remove the masking paper very slowly because this is actually a stickier one. And then I'm going to color in the rest of the flowers. To me, that's so cool when you do that and you see how amazing it looks. Now I'm just going to take the jar that we did. I'm just testing out to make sure that I don't have the flowers extended too far, and I don't. It looks great the way it is. Now I'm just going to finish off the coloring using the same colors I used before. And then do some Castella just on the tulips. I wanted the tulips to stand out a little bit more, especially considering I'm not doing any layering with them at all. So this would give the appearance of being slightly dimensional, even though it's not. And it adds just that little bit of shimmer to them. Now I'm ready to decorate the card a little bit. I'm going to take some ribbon I had and just attach it to the front of the jar using some, well, I'm just putting glue dots on at the back just to hold it in place until I glue down the jar to the front of the card. These are actually paper pumpkin glue dots that were left over. Usually glue dots come in a roll, which are a lot easier actually than that. Going to glue that down to the front of the card, and then I'm going to take that whole piece and glue it to my card base. There's lots of ways that you can embellish this card. I'm sure you can use whatever's in your stash that coordinates with the colors that you have chosen. I'm using mostly the 2019-2021 colors. So basically the new ink colors that came out last year. Okay, now I'm just going to attach that to the front of the card using again some liquid glue, but you could also use dimensionals if you want to have even more dimension to it. Now I had previously made a little bow out of some twine, and I'm just going to use some glue dots to attach that to the front, and then I also put another glue dot just behind the ribbon because I felt that it wasn't going to stay there, or it was moving around just a little bit too much. Using dimensionals, I'm going to put the sentiment right beside the jar, just using one dimensional actually. And then I decided that we need some kind of gems or something fancy, and I just used 3 of the coordinating Rococo Rose gems right around the hello. Those are the in color gems that coordinate with colors that came out last year. As you can see, I still have quite a few left. And they're kind of, I guess, faceted, I guess you could say. But the colors match perfectly with the cardstock, so I chose those today. So that's our card for today. Please jump on over to our Facebook group for the Alphabet Inspiration Card Challenge and feel free to share your creations over there. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time for the letter I. Please subscribe and hit that bell icon to be notified each time I upload a new video. Thanks for watching and stay safe.